architect. We've also got Van Rodriguez, and he is a also senior lead cloud architect. So happy to have you guys on, and I'll kick it away.
Hey, thanks, Erica. Yeah, so this is going to be roughly about just going over VCF 9, specifically related to 9.1, because we took a survey and figured that more people are interested in going to 9.1 instead of 9.0. And given some of the bugs we've hit, that's not really that bad of an idea. So my name is Alan Harrington. As she just stated, I am a V expert and a Broadcom Knight on VCF 9 for operations and storage, and I have multiple VCF 9 VCAPs. So we are with RapidScale, who won the service provider for VMware Cloud Foundation as a service last year. So we have very in-depth VMware knowledge, and we do a whole lot. And Van, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, everyone. My name is Van Rodriguez. I am a senior lead cloud network architect for RapidScale. And my advantage point will be coming from more of the infrastructure network design uh, uh, point of view.
All right. So as we just stated, hopefully this is who we are still, and we're going to leave with a roadmap or a guide to figure out whether or not you want to do a greenfield, a brownfield, or a fleet upgrade. So an import and then upgrade. Some of the key blockers for us were the NSX changes and how that interfaces with the fabric. So that is Van's area of expertise. You do not want me doing that at all. So it is good to have Van on here for that sort of stuff. And then a quick readiness checklist that we can apply immediately with a lot of the caveats that we're seeing when we're deploying for customers and for ourselves. So we'll go ahead and get started. VCF 9 is a completely different animal than VCF 5 was. It is now one version package. So as you know, VCF 5 included vSphere 8, NSX 4, et cetera, like ARIA Suite 8 as well, 818. VCF 9 is a complete package. So they've changed all the versioning codes. So VCF 9 is what it is across the board. So vSphere 9, vSAN 9, NSX 9, Operations 9. It's a whole single versions. So that fleet upgrades replace the old component side by side interoperability matrix, which is nice because then you don't necessarily have to worry about it. Operations is now built in, which is super cool. So instead of having to tack it on and bolting it on from the outside, it now is a complete integration inside of your daily operations, and everything that you do will be through here. Not, well, everything with some of the advanced monitoring and things of that nature. vCenter still exists, of course, everything still exists, but your main point of daily ops is going to be inside of operations. There's cloud style multi-tenancy. So VMware and Broadcom want to encompass and incorporate this sort of cloud vision. So it is a true private cloud. It is your cloud elsewhere. There's data sovereignty, there's controls exports, there's things of that nature. So doing so will allow you to use VCF automation and do multi-tenancy for across the board, set up different regions, things like that. It is the replacement for VMware Cloud Director. So this is something to go ahead and get used to and get your devs working on with networking and billing and things of that nature to check out first, because VApps need to shift to blueprints and a few other things. This is the part that sort of blew my mind, and I had to call in for help and assistance. And NSX is now a first-class domain, right? So it's a first-class citizen. It has complete VPCs. So plus it's got standards based with EVPN and VXLAN with Arista that unifies the fabric together instead of stitching them together. So edge uplinks and things like that now go directly into BGP on Arista, which is absolutely wild. So a bunch of the edge nodes and the gateways are sort of going away. They're not going away. They're still there if you want them. But for the ultimate speed and the ultimate performance, this is the direction you want to go. And this is what we're currently doing in non-prod. There's also native Kubernetes and workload mobility. So there's a very tight integration in VKS, which is the supervisor services for Kubernetes. So it is now completely integrated as well, and it is very important to go through and get that sort of understood. And the migration path, if you're using that, is a little bit more complicated. So that is just increasing about the versioning we just talked about. So the readiness checks apply to everything at once, which is incredibly helpful because now a pre-upgrade package includes all the bombs, all the upgrades, all the software, and will automatically do all of the checks and balances and make sure you're ready to upgrade right across the board. Very different than VCF 5. With that, of course, comes a lot of different documentation. The documentation is absolutely crazy. VCF 5.2 was 1,400 pages roughly. 9.0 is, as you can see, 8,300 pages. And 9.1 is roughly 9,100 pages. That is a 6.6x increase in document sizes. All of that, there was 800 pages added in just a single point release. So going from 9.0 to 9.1 added 834 pages. This is what I put into AI. This is what I got for because I didn't tally all the patch, and it calls out a very good point that 5.2 documents the stack and 9.0 documents the entire cloud that you're building. As we know, there's a lot of differences. Kind of went over this earlier. There's now a centralized identity management, which is very important. There's VMs and Kubernetes are co-equal with native VKS. It is a platform with the new fleet construct. That is a completely new concept, and that is something that we'll be going into a little bit later. The legacy way of 5.2, as we just went over and stated several times, independent versionings, different consoles and controls, and then heavy downtime for backups and restores. VCF 9.1 has come a long way, and at least consolidating on all of our backups and making sure they're in the same place. With that, and part of my confusion is that NSX is buried chapter with a 950-page section of VCF 9.1, nearly 1,000 pages. 11% of all the documents is now NSX exclusively. And that is just an outlandish number of documents. The operations family is 30x larger in documentation. The completely net new concepts are fleets, orgs, and providers, supervisor, and mobility. There is a lot of extra API reference documentation that was put in, and that does add into a lot of the extra documentation, as we can see. So even though it was a 6.6 increase, 39% of those was absorbed operations and then auto-generated API references. So there's a lot of pages, but it's not horrible, horrible, horrible. This section, we're going to talk about how to do the different upgrades, the different cycles, and whether or not we want to do a greenfield or a brownfield. As current hardware costs are, we know not a lot of people are able to do greenfield. So we've been working on doing some of the brownfield or doing some of the reduced complexity with the brownfield and then wiping out what few hosts we have. We're having to get creative about vSAN versus fiber channel. We're having to do versus NFS, and we're just kind of having to do a few different caveats depending on the customer's needs and our needs about what we're doing in each data center. Greenfield is, of course, completely clean design. You've got full freedom. You can set in all your conventions from naming standardization to temp gross to whatever the case may be. Brownfield is you bring in a existing vSphere and NSX environment in. The fleet upgrade is you deploy ops and then, or you already have ops, and then you upgrade your entire VCF estate forward as one. Your starting point really changes everything that you do. It's very important to come together with what you want to do. We use this take to start a sort of a hybrid approach of greenfield and brownfield. We did a new greenfield deployment for our management domain. So we have all new ops, all new things. Our ops guy is not happy with me. Sorry about that, Robbie. And we are going from there, and he's having to redo a lot of those connectors and import the data. But we established it was the best way to get all of the DNS naming conventions, everything like that, sort of set up and good to go. The supported upgrade path to 9.1. There's 4 common different points. There's vSphere 8 and Area Operations 8, plus NSX 4, plus ARIA automation, depending on what you have. And then you have VCF 5, which is what has typically been deployed, with or without automation. So the networking and automation choices you decide today are what are going to be decides your path later on. It is important to start thinking about and start upgrading, especially if you're a larger environment, at least get used to some of this, because end of support for vSphere 8 is October 2027, which doesn't seem, it seems like you've got over a year to do it, but it is going to creep up because 9.1 is a drastic different way to do this. Architecturally, there's quite a few differences in 9.1. So there's now this concept of a VCF management services instead of having individual ones. As Broadcom and VMware move us into different Kubernetes clusters and different Kubernetes things, they've created a service that has multiple VMs, and within those VMs are running the Kubernetes service and different services. So logs is now inside of this management service. Quite a few other operations as well. So even if you have a 9.0, unfortunately, you might want to think about doing another greenfield for a 9.1, or at least centralizing DNS. There needs a lot of IP addresses in 9.1. We'll get into it a little bit later, but last time I think we calculated them out. It was over 60 IP addresses just to deploy everything. So think about new functions, new VLANs, things of that nature to sort of isolate things. Even the SSO is now combined into those management services. The license server is the answer to sort of dark mode sites and sort of deploying without getting ops fully up and operational. It's a 2x4 server, but it is a required appliance, so you do have to have it. Go ahead and get everybody on the same page with naming conventions. I know this is something that's been harped about for enterprises for decades, but really think about, are you going to do the site function number like DAL01, or are we going to do function number dot site like VCF MVC01 dot DAL01? We ended up landing on the latter just for scalability, as well as supporting more of the different documentation and just being able to reference that. That sort of made a little bit more sense to us. It also allows us to possibly move our Active Directory or SSO domain into a different area, away from the main tenancy. So that way people don't necessarily have to be tied with all the same DNS caveats. Some of the components don't need the site. So think of that large, like hyperscaler model that we have. So instead of DAL01 VCD, for example, you can just have cloud, and then DAL01 can be an instance within that or a region within VCFA. 9.1 does force required upgrade order. Workload domains can be deferred to a little bit later on. The wrong order, you will get licensing and sync errors coming next. And there is a dependency graph and chart that will tell you what to upgrade when. That is within the page of the documents. So buried in there is its own chapter on upgrades and things of that nature. Definitely check that out, reference that more. And we'll give you some tips and tricks here at the end that really, really made a big difference for us. These are some of the real worlds and blockers and integration checks that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about these next, kind of let them know about what's going on. And then hopefully that'll help you out and give you a little bit of a heads up. So there is this one symptom is that the vCenter can't be licensed, even though it's not connected to a license server. It is 9.1. It does require the new license server validate that you can reach it and that you can ping it. These are some of the KVs to jot down in case you can't. The good news is it does run on a trial, so it is not that critical if it's not licensed right away, and you will be able to license it a little bit later on. This is a different little area that we've seen. So there's upgrade binaries don't appear in VCF 9.0, and there is a version sequence mismatch that happens sometimes in the operations layer. Make sure that your VCF installer or fleet deployer, and then the SDCM, and then within ops, make sure that Life Manager is patched to that upgrade path so that you can do 9.1 first. Then you will be able to see all the binaries for 9.1. That is something that shows up. This happens a fair amount. It is kind of annoying and pretty frustrating. These are some of the pre-flights. This is the readiness check that we've sort of found out. First, make sure that as you get through and ready, your license server is reachable and populated. Your upgrade sequence is validated against current versions. So make sure you have all sorts of current versions that are attached. Make sure that they are ready and within the same step, as well as validated against the upgraded and supportability matrix. Your identity management, the SSO, validate that you're not running like just LDAP, but you're also running LDAP-S. And I'm going to skip over this next one for a second. Make sure that, of course, you test your backups and get ready to do an instance recovery if you need it or if things fail. There's some other things that I need to type out here and add. I'll do that again shortly, but definitely check your certs. Use vcert, use whatever tool in vCenter, check out your entire SSO domain. Make sure all of your DNS records and all of your certificates are all lowercase. This is not a requirement for the actual SSL certs, but there is some heavy bugs in there where you need to make sure everything is lowercase and save yourself a bunch of headache. Go ahead and make those new DNS entries. Go ahead and do whatever you need to regen the cert that are lowercase, but make sure that happens. The other thing that we've discovered recently is that sometimes, and depending on where and what's going on and how your NTP servers are set up, is that NTP needs to be within 5 seconds of each other. Otherwise, your deployment can fail. So we were banging our head up against the wall for a little bit, and then come to find out that one of our NTP servers in our non-prod area was walking, and there was a 39-second difference between one NTP server and the next. The main controller had latched onto an NTP server that was unavailable, and it had just started walking. So that took pretty long to figure out. We recommend, and I've written a blog post about it, go check it out, about deploying a quick Photon server, checking out all of your NTP settings, adding them into the Photon server, and validating that you are not on initialization and that your NTP is correct, because that caused quite a few headaches. Between that and the SSL certificate and the DNS all being lowercase, that seems to take care of at least 90% of the issues that we've seen. There is also another bug right now that they're working through for SSO for vCenter and getting that logged in and configured, but that is not a upgrade thing. That is just after the fact. Be sure to check, and Van's part's coming up, be sure to check your networking mode and decide on your fabric and whenever you're ready about the types of transport gateways and whether or not BGP to each TOR, separate TORs in the spine leaf, or whether or not they're going to be up on the leaf and or the spine, and all the different fun networking things. So go ahead and bring in your networking team and get them ready for all of this. And Van, I'm going to pass it off to you so that you can explain more about all the different networking stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. First, I'd like to thank Alan, our VMware Knight, for inviting me to join the conversation today. It's a great opportunity to discuss NSX and Arista two technologies that happen to be among my favorite networking topics. My perspective on VMware Cloud Foundations, as I mentioned earlier, is as a network architect. I'm responsible for the physical data center network, so I tend to look through that lens at VCF. Several years ago, RapidScale made the strategic decision to adopt both NSX and Arista. Since then, one of the questions we've constantly asked is how can we make these technologies simpler to operate, easier to support, and more effective for our support and implementations team? And then at the same time, how can we leverage them to deliver the best possible experience for our customers? Today, I'll be sharing a mix of newer developments along with some foundational concepts that many of us may already be familiar with. More importantly, I like to focus on how we can bring these capabilities together in a practical way and determine where they can provide the most value for our organization and our customers. Next slide, Alan, please.
Yep. And some of these, well, a lot of these are brand new with 9.1.
Yep.
So this is not to say we're on the bleeding edge, but we're fans pushing the boundaries pretty more when we're running into stuff that doesn't even have blogs referenced yet about what to do. So kudos to Van.
And that, as Alan mentioned earlier, the amount of NSX documentation has grown significantly over the last few years. It shows how much the platform has evolved, but it also means there's no way we could cover every feature, configuration, or enhancement in a single session. Instead, we're going to focus on the areas that are most relevant to us and the things that have caught our attention from both an operational and architectural perspective. Looking back at our cloud journey, we've come a long way. Many of us remember the days of everything was VLAN backed, and then over time we transitioned to a hybrid approach, maybe supporting both traditional VLAN as well as VXLAN based, and then Geneve NSX. Now we're seeing another exciting development with the introduction of the unified fabric alongside Arista. This was something that we were very happy to see become available with NSX and VCF 9.1 because it gives us additional options and flexibility in how we design and operate our environments. One of the things that stands out in 9.1 is the ability to adopt a grow as you go model. Organizations can start with a distributed architecture, then grow into a more centralized NSX deployment, or maybe even into a unified fabric. When we compare what we saw in VCF 9, there were several support and operational considerations that needed to be addressed before we could comfortably move forward with our Tier 0, Tier 1 customer deployment strategy. There also appear to be some fairly significant constraints around network deployment models within the VCF framework. So how can we take advantage of these new capabilities to simplify operations, improve supportability, and create a more scalable and flexible network model for both our teams and our customers? Next slide, please. One of the early questions we found ourselves discussing was whether we wanted to take a more distributed or more centralized approach with NSX. We spent time in the lab evaluating different designs, and we eventually gravitated towards a more centralized model. Big reason for us was that it was BGP and ECMP uplink capabilities, which align very well with our existing data center standards and operational practices. It fit the way we already think about network design, resiliency, and traffic engineering. And then another major benefit for us was the ability to support overlapping private networks. That's a critical requirement in our environment. With our hosted private cloud and hybrid cloud offerings, we support customers of all sizes across a wide range of industries, and it's not uncommon for different customers to be using the same private IP address ranges. Having a solution that can accommodate that cleanly and at scale is extremely important to us. We also spent a lot of time looking at the throughput requirements and how those requirements would evolve over time within our hosted private cloud platform. And VCF 9, our focus was primarily on centralized, dedicated edge node clusters using BGP and ECMP. We really wanted to understand the real world behavior of the platform, particularly around the uplink redundancy, failover scenarios, and overall resiliency. Then we get the nice surprise of VCF 9.1 being announced, and that really changed the conversation for us. We were excited to see the additional flexibility being introduced around the edge deployments. From our perspective, it appears that we can continue leveraging many of the design principles and operational practices we're comfortable with today, while also creating a path towards NSX 0 Tier 1 based edge environments. What we like most is that it doesn't feel like an all or nothing decision anymore. We can continue supporting our existing models while gradually expanding our use of NSX, allowing the architecture to evolve alongside our business and customer requirements. That flexibility gives us the opportunity to grow into the solution rather than having to redesign everything at once. Next slide, please.
Yeah, we're about to get to the performance game changer of 9.1.
Yep. And then while Al and I were in Dallas, we get to hear the big announcement between Arista and NSX around the unified fabric. And that immediately caught our attention because it introduced another option for bringing together our hosted private cloud platform and the Arista network infrastructure. Historically, we treated the compute environment and the network fabric as two fairly distinct entities. The physical network did its job and the virtual network layer did its job. With the unified fabric, we're now looking at an architecture where the network fabric can extend all the way into an ESXi host, creating a much tighter integration between physical and virtual environments. From our perspective, that's an exciting shift. Rather than relying on centralized networking constructs, which can create north-south traffic choke points, the fabric becomes more distributed and integrated throughout the environment. The result appears to be a more scalable architecture while still maintaining operational simplicity. Another aspect we really appreciated is the use of open industry standard protocols. As a service provider, we're always cautious about introducing unnecessary proprietary dependencies into our network environment. Seeing the solution built around standards such as BGP, EVPN, and VXLAN aligns very well with how we design and operate our data center networks today. Ultimately, what makes this interesting for us is the ability to combine the strengths of NSX and Arista while continuing to leverage proven network standards. It gives us another architectural option as we evolve our cloud offerings, and it provides a path towards a more unified operational model across both physical and virtual network domains. And then I am going to go to the next slide, Ellen.
Yeah, so that's wild too, as we're coming back to open standards everywhere, which is nice for just monitoring in of itself because we also have other monitoring platforms that like to check on things and go from there. But the fact that we're able to do EVPN through VXLAN on directly to an Arista switch is just it's mind blowing now.
It's going to help with, like I said, those north-south choke points.
Yeah.
So going through the announcement and how we see it working, and I believe there's already some videos out there on how this actually works. But first, you have to set up the control plane between the VCF route controller. You set up your control plane between that and your Arista EVPN gateways using BGP. Then both sides communicate their routing to one another. And then as you build out, then you build your tenancy environments, your tenants. You build out your tenant environments with the VCF transit gateways, and you map those one-to-one with your layer 3 VNIs into the fabric. so that you can utilize those links that you have from your host up to your top of rack switches. Next slide, Alan. And then you start having your routes exchange. So the EVPN type 5 routes, your IP prefixes, they'll auto exchange. So your VCF environment to Fabric, it's going to share the /32 prefixes.
This is a new slide, huh? I haven't seen this one before. Yeah.
Uh, no, this is we shared this one at uh, the place in Dallas.
Oh, shucks. It must have been way over my head back then.
Yeah,
You've made me learn a lot. Sorry for interrupting.
no worries. So you have the VCF Fabric. It's going to share the /32 prefixes with the TEP IP addresses in the gateways. So, and then your fabric to the VCF, it's going to share either prefixes you want to announce from the fabric or a default gateway per VRF, just depending on how you set up your environments. And then your data plane is going to continue to be updated with the VCF controller, the TEPs, and your Arista gateways. The Arista gateways have to know where to route traffic to. So the VCF, as I see it, the VCF route controller is going to control uh, IP and TEP assignments. So if you have a VM that sits on one TEP, and then you vMotion it to another host that sits on another TEP, that route is going to be updated automatically, and then it's going to be propagated up to the fabric network. And they're claiming that there's no static or manual routing configuration, and it's going to be symmetric, and you're going to be able to be line rate forwarding, which we all want because we don't want any bottlenecks in the network. And we can go to the next slide. And then why does it matter? For the networking team, as they read the bullet points, it unifies the routing and visibility. It's consistent with the multi-tenant policies. Your tenant are segmented and isolated. No network proprietary lock. I guess there's a misspelling in the slide.
That was probably me. I can't do
And
that one.
then and then a Arista Cloud Vision complements VCF. And then I'll let Alan expound a little bit more on the benefits for the virtualization side.
Yeah, so dropping down the edge nodes and things like that means that we get to go a lot faster, right? We're not going to be any oversubscribed anymore on a whole lot of the links or anything like that. So we're going to have a lot better workload scaling because we're going to be able to predict what we're doing and what's happening. It's going to make our lives easier and the networking team's life harder. So depending on who you are, what's going on, the connectivity options for VCF workloads certainly has expanded. You can still do it the traditional way. This way is going to give us a lot better performance, and some of the customers are demanding it so that we can actually get some of that line running forwarded for the layer three. This is pretty pretty cool stuff. It's very confusing to me, and I had to watch a lot of videos on it. So I had a lot of talks with Van to help me out.
Yeah, that's a big point though, Alan. I mean, now your network team and your virtualization teams really need to be on the same page, especially before deploying VCF,
Yep.
any version. So that's a good point.
This is our plan. So this is how we executed it and what we did. I decided that I was going to steal some hosts from the workload domain that we had, format them, have Moises, who's our lead VMware engineer. He's a rock star. Deploy a greenfield management domain. So he wiped those hosts. We put 9.1 on them. And then I decided we were going to have, for now, and we'll scale into more if need be, a single fleet per data sovereignty region. US, EU, APAC, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have at least 2 cloud proxies per locations with data persistence. Data persistence is a new feature that is pretty nice because if there's any connection or cutoff from the main operation site to this site, data is going to stay there locally and it'll queue up until it'll stream in and the connection is restored. Very, very important features to have for any sort of security or data log auditing. 2 workload domains per data center plus the management domain. kind of decided this from a fault domain region perspective. Just didn't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. And as we grew, we wanted to make sure that the vCenter was okay to handle all of the workloads and things like that. Pretty cool, pretty standard, pretty neat. I imagine most of you are probably going to have something very similar, and it's very nice. Pretty simple. I believe in the KISS methodology. It's saved me many times and makes my life a lot easier. So then I don't have to remember as much complicated stuff. Uh, Go ahead, check out your data sovereignty regions, check out your naming like we talked about. Go ahead and build a greenfield. If you haven't checked out Holodeck, Holodeck was just updated a few days ago for VCF 9.1. Go ahead and upgrade Holodeck and deploy 9.1 and get used to it and start playing around with it. Check out how to add in your workload domains and then cut over monitoring to VCF operations to get some of that value for the Broadcom dollars for the VMware licensing. For your day minus N, we decided to go ahead and wait, and we are not upgrading to 9.1 across the board just yet, while our workload domains are still in 9, or still in 5, and we are debating about whether or not we want to import them and then upgrade, or whether or not we're going to start new. A lot of our sites have to do with VCF, VCD, VMware Cloud Director. So we were working through the constructs of how to incorporate that in there. And then we should be getting close to time, so I'm going to go ahead and speed up on some of these so we still have a Q&A section. So VCF operations is now in platform. You have all sorts of fun dashboards right out of the gate, super metrics to check out all kinds of things that are joined up. There's still the good old number of vMotions that happen that keep on climbing. You have embedded application discovery and app observability built into the platform. So provided you can do app discovery through VMware tools, or it'll do it through networking ports if you have some of the NSX. You can scale quicker, you can monitor even more things, and there's a cost reduction between your external monitoring platform. Up next, and this is what we would do, deploy a sandbox all the time. I wasted a ton of time deploying ESX9 over and over again when VCF9 would go to stand it up or installer, and then it would break it. Make sure you deploy it in a sandbox through Holodeck and HoloRouter first, and then make sure you get that down like a pro and go from there. Go ahead and rethink all of your IP addressing scheme. If you have the chance, I would recommend doing a new VLAN just to get everything nice and clear, because it is a lot of IP addresses. I believe it's over 60 IP addresses, if I recall, to deploy VCF 9.1 in the recommended environment area. That DNS, make sure your forward DNS and your backwards DNS are all working. Everything is nice and happy. Everything is all lowercase, the certs, the names, etc. And that will make life a lot easier. And double check NTP. Go ahead and deploy that Photon server. I've got a blog on my site. Shows you how to do it. Just double check. Make sure that your NTP is lined up in areas. We got some commands in there. W32TM /monitor that will pull all your domain controllers in the environment. Make sure time is all like in lockstep with all of those, and definitely check that out. Not only as part of that, but on the journey, figure out whether or not you want to do your greenfield or your import or the fleet upgrade. Go ahead and use the upgrade planner, which is new and super cool and is interactive. So you can put in what you have and it'll let you do everything you need. Talk to your networking team. Talk to your vans. Talk to everybody.
Yes.
It is yeah, go ahead, Van. Because this is
Yes,
the most
please.
we've ever needed them.
Yeah, definitely get ahead of it with your networking team, like Alan's suggesting. Get your IPs, get your VLANs, get your firewall rules ready.
Yeah.
It's going to make life easier on you.
Test your backups. Go from there, right? Once again, just to reiterate and bring it all home, break ELM, break all your length mode, validate all your certs, make sure they're all lowercase, make sure all your FQDNs are lowercase, forwards and backwards for DNS, stand up ops, size the right footprint. At least now you can resize without having to redeploy. So that's kind of convenient. That's super cool. You can install on X100 CPUs, but it is required to have X2. So like your 6248Rs, your 6248s, or whatever the case may be, your 5214s, whatever that the second generation Xenon processors are. If you need help, need assistance, write us. We're glad to help. That's kind of what we do, so it's not a big deal. I have been in trouble a few times for trying to source parts from eBay or Server Supply or whatever the case may be to get our lab fully up to date and functional, just to make sure that we are within that compatibility matrix. So, thanks for that. And this is the event you guys are all at because we are pre-recording this earlier, and this was a event that we sponsored and we talked about on Dallas or in Dallas. And I guess Erica, we were lucky enough and had good enough feedback that we were asked to present on the 25th. So here we are again, and go ahead to make the most of VMUG. Take a certification. Go ahead and get that. Go ahead and upgrade to VMUG Advantage so you can get some of those licenses and start testing with your holodeck and everything from there. Join your local VMUG. Find out, go from there. Check it out. It is a super cool place to go, and it's a good way to stay in touch and figure out what exactly people are seeing, and not only that, but for career development. So go ahead and we'll go from there. And if you have a lot more questions, feel free to use this QR code. You can reach out to RapidScale or Van or I, and we will talk about what we can do to help or whatever the case may be. And that's all I have for now. And you're going to see me change clothes because I'm going to pass it back to Erica, and then I'll be live for the Q&A. Van had decided to go on a cruise, so he will not be here for the Q&A. So I will record all of the networking related questions and pass it on and get back to you. All right. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you both. This was incredible. And again, as Alan said, we'll hop to a live Q&A here now.
Thanks.
Let's see. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, it's so one of the questions was about the lowercase, and I agree, it is pretty weird. It should not be happening, but it has to do with the fields in the PSC address, and it doesn't match. And so currently, they've got an old KB from a while ago, but they suggest actually just dropping that down and flipping that over. So I will pull that out, and there's the VMware KB. So no, it is pretty strange that you're not supposed to have it be lowercase. I know that's been kind of annoying, but we've seen a lot of mismatches and them unable to view and agree things when it is a mixed case, which is pretty annoying because I always want to have my vCenter with a lowercase v and uppercase C, but am not able to anymore. Hopefully that gets fixed, but don't know if it will. Any more questions? Let's see. KB can deploy in a brownfield. Yeah. So there's Leah Co. UK is an amazing blog that I used a whole lot, and she does a phenomenal job with everything. And then that one's a very good one for importing. There's, of course, William Lamb's, and there is a great YouTube channel at the same time that is very good that I'm going to look up, and I'll send the link out too. The brownfield sites are at least a little bit trickier because of some of the nuances with conversion. And so we actually did the hybrid approach where we did a greenfield in the management domain, and now we're importing our workloads into 9.1. So since this was recorded, a lot of our vCenters are now inside at least operations for logging and monitoring and analysis and things like that. Anything else? How used for the dashboards? Well, it is So the new dashboards are definitely more involved. You can because you want them to collect metrics from everywhere. There is a lot more features that you can use for comparison. So super metrics are becoming a critically more important thing because we're able to get that entire roll up across not only just one VCF instance, which is what we had, but multiple and separate fleets. So it is becoming a lot more useful and more knock-like and more, well, basically hyperscaler. So it's incredibly different, and you can look at it and still drill down to the parts that are incredibly familiar at the same time. So it's a very cool feeling, and it is pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what our operations team does more with some of the next dashboards. All right. Well, there are some things that I want to attend to, and it is 4:15. So thank you all very much and have a great one. And I will see you shortly. And feel free to reach out to me at it's blog.allenrocks.com if you need anything else. Thanks.